Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. Now, each week we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry. Now, today we're lucky enough to have a remarkable guest joining us, Alexander Swoboda, CEO of FACTON and CrescentOne. Hello, Alexander. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Barry. Good to be on the show.
Perfect. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Very excited to sharing some insights with you.
Good, lovely. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. We really appreciate it. Now, in the introduction, I introduced you as CEO of FACTON and CrescentOne, and that's unusual for someone to be CEO of two companies. How does that come about?
So I was running a company called FACTON starting in 2009 when I actually joined the company as an interim CFO, but then bought out the founders and took on the role as managing director. And ran the company since then. And in 2020, the main shareholder, Hasso Plattner, the chairman of SAP, and I decided to sell the company. And we sold it to Constellation, which is Canada's largest tech stock. We have about 8 billion in revenues annually. And we are a conglomerate of 1,000 independent B2B software companies. So after about 1.5 years being part of the group, I felt the need to do a little bit more and to learn something new. And I got the opportunity to take on a second company in the group, which is called CrescentOne. It's an ERP company which we bought out of Fujitsu. And I'm now spending about 3 days a week with CrescentOne. I'm spending 1 day a week with my old company, FACTON, where we hired a general manager who's doing the day-to-day business. And I'm spending about 1 day a week finding more B2B tech companies, which could become a part of Constellation and part of my portfolio in the future.
So have you always been a very ambitious man? Usually being CEO of one company is enough. So was it always on the cards that you were going to be CEOs of two and maybe three in the future? Who knows?
Well, I started my career at McKinsey, and I guess most people who go there show a certain degree of ambition. So it probably somewhat wasn't the cards. Also, whenever I do sports, I like to be ambitious. So there seems to be kind of a pattern which you're uncovering here.
Perfect, lovely. Thank you very much. So can you just walk us back? Talk to us a little bit about your timeline, your history. What brought you from, let's say, humble beginnings to being CEO of two companies today? What's your journey been like?
So the funny thing is that I really always wanted to do something in business. So while other kids might have had the idea to become a firefighter or an astronaut, I always liked business. And to the older viewers, they may still recall the show Family Ties with Michael J. Fox, where he was like a young and ambitious I think a business student. And when I was a kid, he was kind of my role model. So I always wanted to follow his footsteps. And so it was natural for me to study business administration at the University of Vienna, where I was born and brought up. And after that, going into consultancy also seemed to be a natural step. McKinsey was a great school. I worked there for 7 years, did a lot of very interesting projects, learned a lot, had a few projects which had great impact for large companies. So I very much enjoyed this period of time. And it's not easy to leave McKinsey because consulting is something very different than line management. So when I got the chance to join a venture capital fund, I found this to be the perfect segue from out of consulting into the real world, because I was deeper engaged with certain companies, had more direct responsibility, but it still wasn't the real thing. So I did this for a couple of years, then founded my own small advisory company where I was freelancing for about a year, something which I can recommend to everyone. It was the best work-life pay balance I think I ever had. But after a year, I was called by Hasso Plattner's family office whether I could join FACTON to restructure it after the automotive crisis. And to me, this was kind of the last exit from this consulting advisory world into the real management world. I was about 35 back then. So I thought that's a good opportunity to give this a try. And I initially started there as an interim manager, but then in the end, now I'm with the company for about 14 years, as it sometimes happens.
So is being CEO of two companies a bit like being a parent in that you might have a favorite child, but you're not allowed to say who that favorite child is?
That's a trick question. It's probably not being like a parent, but I do have different relationships to the both companies. Yeah, so the FACTON after 14 years is clearly something where I have a lot of detailed intimacy with the organization. I know lots of details, so I'm a long time emotional involvement. And CrescentOne I only took on 1.5 years ago. But it's the larger company, so there is some like I can have more impact there. I really enjoy driving this company now with very interesting people, but it's a bit of a different relationship. So that's probably not a bad comparison with the parenthood.
Because you have these two companies, do you have to have different management styles, or do you employ the same tactics, the same strategies as if you were just having one?
I think it does require different implementations of a management style, but I think the way I manage in general is something which is coming from deep inside. Yeah, so I very much believe in sharing responsibility, in giving people the chance to grow, in developing people. This is something which I'm trying in both organizations. Facton has been more of a startup company when I joined, and I changed a lot of culture there, professionalized things, grew things. While CrescentOne has been around for almost 40 years, so a lot of things are already in place there and are going well, and I don't want to break things which are going well. So I'm doing different things, but I think my genuine interest in people and trust in people and willingness to develop people is probably serving me well at both companies.
So you mentioned there the two different styles. So one is more of a startup, and one has been like long term. So do you have? So what do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy getting in at the ground level and starting the company from scratch, or do you actually enjoy more getting into an existing company and seeing how that works and seeing how you can improve or make changes?
So I'm definitely not a person who starts a company by himself. I'm not a person with the creative idea. I'm very good in managing things and growing things. A company needs to have a certain size for me to have impact there. And I would say that the run at Facton was great when I started it 15 years ago with a smaller company, getting very operational, also making some mistakes, learning things from the ground. Over time, I have grown, and I think now I have the skills to conduct the same things at larger organizations. And now I really appreciate having the possibility to also run a larger show.
Again, being CEO of two companies, do you take on a lot of the burden? Do you have a lot of hats to wear, or do you delegate and entrust a lot of people to wear those hats for you?
In the beginning, I was wearing a lot of hats at Facton directly, and over time, I've managed finance, sales, professional services, product management, marketing, all at certain points in time by myself. The only thing which I've never done by myself was being a VP R&D. That's the only thing where I always luckily had somebody I could delegate to. But by now, I've established structures in both companies which allow me to take me out of the operational topics. I don't mind going deep if my team likes me to get involved, but I also try to make sure that I don't micromanage them, because if you do everything as the CEO, and if you interfere with everything as the CEO because you think you can do it better, then you educate the organization towards not taking on responsibility. And I think that's the worst mistake which you can do as a CEO. And particularly if you're running two companies, you have to be very careful that you don't go deeper than you should, and only there where your team really needs your help.
Is that a hard skill to master? I mean, the temptation, obviously, being CEO is that you want to know everything and maybe do everything. How do you know when to hold back? Is it a skill that you've learned over the years, or is it something that you've always been able to do?
It's actually something where I've made my fair share of mistakes. Yeah. So when I joined Facton, I still had my consulting hat on, and I tried to go into depths in different areas. And I had it was a funny situation, because one of my direct reports was about 25 years older than me, or 20 years older than me, and he became like both somebody who reported to me, but a little bit of a mentor. And I learned a lot from him, how to take myself back and how to allow others to make mistakes, and like rather coach the manager and not interact directly with the team, like by bypassing the manager. I think over time, once you get to know an organization better, then people will turn to you where they really need help, and then it's important that you don't take decisions or do things by bypassing like the next layer, but doing it together with them. Like I don't mind if somebody from my owner from Constellation interacts with my team directly, and I take the liberty to interact directly with people further down in the organization. But this must never happen behind closed doors or be in secret. This needs to be something which is transparent. And I think then it works well. And currently, my like one of my direct reports is home from COVID, so I'm just taking on meetings for him because like we had an important customer meeting yesterday, for example, which I joined on his behalf. And it's great if you know that you can help, but you have to step in and step out in a meaningful way.
So can you just tell the people watching a bit about Facton and a little bit about CrescentOne?
Yeah.
Maybe not everyone's familiar with them.
No, probably not. So Facton is one of the leading companies in enterprise product costing. So that means that the company enables manufacturing companies to calculate product costs. Largest customer is Ford Motor Company, so a large automaker, but we have many automakers, suppliers in the automotive industry, but also companies from other industries which manufacture goods, like the heating and cooling company Weiland in Germany, or Fresenius, which is one of the leading medtech companies in Germany. So wherever you have a bill of material and want to understand what a product costs, being it in development, being it in purchasing, being it for offer calculation, or in finance and controlling or top management, Factum can help you provide this kind of transparency. And CrescentOne is actually easier to explain because it's a clear category. It's a classic ERP system with some 83 modules which cover everything on the shop floor, from barcode scanning over factory planning, in CRM, HR, finance, whatever you need. We have about 100 customers, more than 100 customers running their factories and plants on CrescentOne, and we cater to very large companies like for example Caterpillar, many Japanese companies. So it's a global ERP system which is deeply rooted in a lot of customers.
And how do both companies respond to the market? Do they respond in the same ways? For example, when the market's looking a bit tough, do you find that both companies go through the same kind of phase, or do you find that they're out of sync?
Yeah, actually, it was interesting for me to see that lots of the things which I've seen and learned at Facton could be applied to CrescentOne in a similar fashion. And the reason for that is that both are really true enterprise software companies. And there's a big difference between enterprise software companies and like B2C companies, apps, anything which is fast moving. My two companies, they are both deeply rooted at the customer, which means that also when the times are tough, like normally people don't think about switching off the ERP system, and the same goes for switching off the costing system. We have like a very deep integration into the customer's landscape, which is great because you can work long term with the customer. You have a lot of reliability. On the flip side, it's always hard to sell these products because it's a big decision for a customer to take the jump, to make the investment, and then go into this system. And when times are tough, companies like tend to delay investment decisions. So this is something which the two companies also have in common. Both companies, like given how powerful are and given how many people are on the system, it's really hard to change something on the system. Yeah, it's not like a simple lean web solution where you just throw something away and build something new. But if you have thousands of users using certain features, you cannot easily let go of that. You have to build things around, and that creates a certain complexity over time.
And are you the kind of CEO who likes to be in a growth phase all the time, or do you find it useful to have like a stabilization phase where you're trying to get all your ducks in a row before you go into the next growth phase?
You know, I think it's good to have both, yeah, because growth phases can be enormously stressful, like both for the founder/CEO, yeah, and for the organization. And I think it's good that you have some time to consolidate, particularly when you have a complex tech stack, because also from a from a technological perspective, if you just keep putting stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff, yeah, like it's getting a little bit unstable. So I do like this stability. So it's probably not a coincidence that I'm running two companies which have a similar requirement here.
And we can't all see the future, but if you were to get your crystal ball out, predictions, tough times ahead or plain sailing?
No, I think that if I look at the whole macro picture, if you went, I'm based here in Vienna, Austria, so not too far away from Ukraine. Like there's a lot of uncertainty in macro politics, being it around China, being it around Russia. I think that interest rates are going to stay higher longer than many people think. So I don't expect the boom days to come back soon. We've like you and I, given our age, I think we've spent most of our career, all of our career in an environment where interest rates were constantly falling, and this has been like a turbocharge for all the companies, for all the careers. And we can know for sure that over the next 30 years, interest rates will not be falling by 20 basis points, right? By 200 basis points, sorry, so by 20%, right? We have to expect that things will be different than they were. And I think it's important to set up companies in such a way that there is a certain resilience and buffer in there, and that things are not built on the expectation that you can raise money at any point in time at a reasonable cost.
It's a really good answer that you've given. Thank you for sharing that. So we're talking about tough times ahead. How did the pandemic change your mindset, change the way that you manage companies? Because that was a surprise for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Many people didn't see that coming.
Yeah, actually, it was a big change, and in all honesty, like with the benefit of hindsight, not necessarily for the worse. Yeah, for me personally, I've been flying from Vienna to Berlin every week, Monday morning, 6:20, red eye, coming back Thursday night, and spent a lot of time on the ground there, because even though I was from a different town, I didn't want to be perceived as a fly-in CEO, but I really wanted to be there with my team, which was a bit of a drag to my family, of course. And I think COVID and the whole remote work showed us all it's much more possible and even efficient to work remotely part of the time. Yeah, you cannot do this all of the time, of course, but it's important to also meet the team. It's important to spend time together, particularly when you hire new people. But it's unbelievable how much we can do remotely. So as an example, the whole transaction, the whole selling the company Facton to a Constellation was all done remotely. So I met the whole Constellation team only 8 months after we closed the deal. And nobody would have thought that this would be possible pre-pandemic. And this now I'm running one company in Berlin and one in Los Angeles and Eindhoven without being on the road all the time. Like I go to Eindhoven and to Berlin at least once a month, and I go to the US once a quarter. So I know that it's important to meet the people, but it's also possible to get a lot of things done in between doing this remotely. So I think the efficiency of the organizations have increased by this experience, even though I would like this is not a reason for wishing for another pandemic, or even like I'm still very cautious, trying to protect my team from COVID, because even though many people don't want to hear this, but it's a serious disease. Yeah, it costs us a lot of manpower, because some people are just sick for a period of time, and I also had some cases of long COVID in my companies, which really took people out for a longer period of time. So it's important to make sure that like people take care of themselves, and that companies are careful regarding diseases and protect their employees.
So you mentioned the pandemic. Are you in the back of your mind preparing for the second one, even though we're not wishing for it? Or is that something that every CEO should be doing now that the first one's happened?
I think that based on the experience of the first of the COVID pandemic, I think if something similar happened again, it would be much easier to cope with it. I think this is still something which I consider like a black swan, that you cannot go to customers at all for such a long period of time. I don't think you can plan for all contingencies, and I'm pretty convinced that the next thing which is going to hit us is going to be different. Yeah, as the famous saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Yeah, so there will be something happening again, which will be a challenge for all the companies. But in the end, that's the task of the management, to show flexibility. And that's the good thing about companies of like a couple of hundred people and not a couple of 100,000 people, that it's much easier to respond because such organizations are much more agile than the large companies of this world.
Thank you. So we know that you're ambitious, but how else would you describe yourself, Alex? What other qualities do you have that you'd like to brag about?
So I think I really like people, and I'm very curious about people. I think this is one of my key traits. I very much like connecting people. So both within the business and privately. I think this is something which has generated a lot of goodwill and value over time, and I'm really enjoying this. And I think people who know me would describe me as a very analytical person, which is a good thing because it fits well to the philosophy of Constellation. Constellation is a company which likes to decide based on data, based on business cases, based on calculations. And this is something which I've learned at McKinsey, and I've shied away a little bit of being too rigorous on that when I was running a smaller company, like in a growth phase, because I was worried that too much analysis might delay things. Yeah? But with the benefit of hindsight, maybe I should have been more analytical with some of the decisions I took back then, and I really liked it and enjoyed it.
So you mentioned one of your regrets there. How's the biggest, let's not say regret, that's the biggest learning that you've had in your lifetime experience of being CEO or even managing companies?
I think probably taking tough decisions too late. Yeah, it's it's a human instinct to give products, ideas, people like another chance. And I think that I've barely acted too early and sometimes acted too late. So I think this is something which I would always as I get more experienced, I'm getting more bold in my decisions and trying to move things quicker.
Perfect. So it would be unfair then to not ask you what your biggest success has been. What do you see as your biggest success in life? And you can be as corny as you like.
Well, the biggest success in life is probably like this is for everyone, like having a happy family. I think this is something which is unparalleled. But when I think about business, I would say my biggest success so far has really been taking on FACTON when it was a small company in a very challenging environment with a very difficult culture back in 2009, then really growing it into a successful, meritocratic, international organization, which it is now. Yeah, so this whole transformation and cultural shift is something which I'm very proud of. And I think this has generated a lot of value to people, to customers, to shareholders. So that's something I'm really proud of.
Perfect, lovely. You did touch on it a little before, but could you just tell us a little bit like how the dynamics within your team and how you navigate challenges when you're working towards a common goal?
I think it's important to give everyone a voice. Yeah, I think it's important to have a personal connection with everyone so that you because you always have people who are more outspoken than others, and there's a risk that people who are more outspoken shout out or overshout the people who are less extroverted. And I think it's important to understand how different people tick. Yeah, there's a training which we did at McKinsey, which was about a concept which is called MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And I've learned afterwards that there's no scientific basis for this whatsoever, but still I like it as a framework, and it helps you to think how people have different preferences. You know, like some people are more emotional, some people are more like rational thinkers. Some people like clear decisions, some people like shades of gray, some are introvert, some are extrovert. And if you think about your team in those dimensions and think about what they need and how you can group people together and how you can help them to be successful and how you can resolve conflicts because of misunderstandings, and I have the absolute belief that 90 5 or even more percent of conflicts are not driven by somebody wanting something bad, but by misunderstandings. If you do that, I think you can really help the team to become effective.
And does that strategy work the same regardless of the size of the company? So obviously it's easy to manage those when you've only got 5 people in a company, but what about when you have 500? Do you apply the same methodology?
I think that the difference is that, and this actually is a challenge indeed, is that at some point you have to lead not only directly and by example, but you have to establish structures which multiply your leadership style into the organization. And that's something which takes time and is not easy to implement.
So going back again to what you said earlier, you mentioned your family and it being one of your biggest successes. So in terms of work-life balance, do you think it's possible for someone who has a CEO of 2 companies to have work-life balance? And if it is, how do you manage that?
I think I do think it's possible. My way of managing it, and this may not be everybody's preferred choice, is to really blend the 2 things together. And I know that some people really believe in hard cuts, yeah. But what I really like about working from home is that I can leave my desk at 5:30 and have Christmas cookies with my family for half an hour, and then come back and continue working. Yeah, and then that's possible. Also, I think the more senior you get, the easier it gets for you to make sure that you have time for the things which are important. So, for example, I consider taking care of my body, like doing sports, as something which is as important as having meetings. Yeah, and not only because I enjoy sports, but because I know if I would stop working out, stop going running, stop doing those things, my performance would decrease over time. Yeah? And it's really interesting when I started to take on the second CEO role, and before I hired the general manager for Factum, I saw that all my KPIs, yeah, like I'm measuring my weight, my cardio fitness with my Apple Watch, like my pulse, my blood pressure, all of those things, and I could really see that in those 6 months, those KPIs were all going down, or actually blood pressure and weight were going up. Yeah, so it's really important to make sure that you treat those needs of your body equally important as fulfilling the business tasks. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable in the long run.
And do you apply that same philosophy for your staff, or do you have a different philosophy?
No, actually, I very much encourage, for example, engaging in sports. Yeah, particularly at Facton, we were encouraging running and cycling and did things together and participated in races. It's a bit more difficult now with me being further away from the team in Los Angeles and Eindhoven, but it's something which I very much encourage. And I don't require people to be at their desk at certain times because it's a certain time, right? I mean, if there's a meeting, of course you have to be there. But if my employees were to go for a run midday and then go back to work, or want to pick up the kids, and then I know that many of them do this, and then maybe are reachable later again, that's all perfectly fine. So I think it's an important part of the culture to allow taking care of the important parts of your personal life and your body as together with some being successful in your job.
Perfect. Yeah, I think flexibility has become very important for many people now, so it's understandable why you have that philosophy. In terms of people who have influenced you, you did mention at the start of the call that you did have a mentor. How important is it to have a mentor in the early stages? Let's say someone is thinking of doing an entrepreneurial task. How is mentoring and networking in general important in your role?
Yeah. I am I always like to learn from different people. I don't think I had a single stage in my career where I was managed by one person and then very much influenced by one single person. But over time, like at McKinsey, I've worked with many great people within the firm and at customers, clients. When I joined the venture capital fund, there was one of the partners I worked together very closely with. At FACTON, I both had a representative of the shareholder and this person I mentioned in the company who was influencing me a lot. And I think it's important to keep your eyes open and to learn. And I have about 10 people maybe with some very different skill set who I've collected throughout my life. Yeah, and if I face a certain challenge, I know that I can reach out to them. And this is actually one of the things which I do like now that we've become part of Constellation. Being a CEO normally is a pretty lonely job, and it was for me for a long period of time. But within Constellation, there is a setup where there are, like I have peers, and there are people in the organization, portfolio managers, who I can reach out to, and who can serve as sparring partners, and who can really help me with challenges. And that's an enormous ease of mind as well, that you don't have the full burden all by yourself, but there is somebody you can share it with and somebody who can support you.
Great answer. In another respect, so not thinking of people in particular, but how about books or podcasts or philosophies? Is there any particular thing that has had a significant impact on your way of thinking or personal development?
Actually, there was a podcast, and I think it was called Manager Tools or Management Tools. It's been a long time since I listened to it. It was in the like when I left McKinsey and joined the venture capital fund. And actually, it was more meant for people with a technical background, but it was a great a dialogue between two people. I remember they both were called Mike. Yeah, so I'm sure that Bart or ChatGPT was able to find it based on this piece of information, and they talked through lots of just basic management topics, and I listened to probably 100 of those episodes, and I think I learned a lot from that, which I could apply. Apart from that, I have to say that I'm not too much a fan of books, and I think I rather like to learn by talking to people and learning from people and watching people than just reading about things.
Yeah, some people do like that interaction. It's more inspiring, isn't it, sometimes when you can do that back and forth. Perfect, lovely. Thank you for sharing that. So we are slowly coming towards the end, but there's a couple of questions I'd just like to add. So when you're looking for potential team members, so what kind of qualities are you looking for? Maybe there's someone fortunate enough to be going for an interview at one of your jobs tomorrow. So what key qualities are you looking for such a candidate?
So the foremost and most important criterion for me is integrity. Yeah, I think with my management style, I need to be able to trust people. So this is something which goes beyond everything else. And if this is a challenge, then it's a clear red flag. I also like to work with people who I trust that they are analytically sharp. Yeah, and I think people need to have passion for what they do. Yeah, I'd rather work with somebody who has the right values and is sharp and motivated and doesn't have the right skill yet. Yeah, and help the person to develop this skill on the job, than finding the person who has the perfect CV and maybe been in this role before, but my team and I, and this is always a decision you take together, would have the feeling that the person doesn't fully buy in, or would, for example, put himself before the team. Yeah, so this is what I mean with integrity, that you share the values of the company and become a member of the team versus putting yourself first.
So normally when I ask this question, one topic that comes up a lot is they tend to prefer young people. You didn't mention it specifically there. Do you have the same kind of attitude? Do you feel that it's better to have younger people rather than, for lack of a better word, older people joining your company?
I think it's really about the right combination. Like I've hired very seasoned people before, and this has worked well. Like one thing which is important is that people, like there's a fire burning in people, and unfortunately some people lose this passion over the lifetime. Yeah, so if somebody just wants to spend the next 5 years sailing towards retirement, that would definitely not be the right person to work with me. But if somebody has a lot of experience and still shows the passion, I don't think that age should be a reason not to hire somebody. And actually, given that CrescentOne is a company with such a long history, there are lots of people in the organization who are older than me, and I really enjoy working with them, learning from their experience, having their experience both with customers and with the product. That's super valuable. So I don't think saying no to ageism is just woke. I think this is really something which makes a lot of sense. particularly given that
Seasoned.
talent markets are drying up, right? So it's very hard to find new talent. So one shouldn't discriminate for age for sure.
Perfect. Seasoned, that's the word I was looking for. If you want to teach me English after the show, please let me know. I'll be happy, grateful for any lessons. Is there anyone out there who you'd like to swap roles with for the day? Anyone who you would think, oh, I could really benefit from taking that person's job just for the day, just to see how they do things? And if so, who would it be?
It's an interesting question. So the funny thing is, like, my son always likes to ask these questions, like, would you rather be Superman or Batman? And I always say, actually, I'd rather be me. Yeah, and I really like if I look back at the kid who watched Family Ties 40 years ago, like if this kid could see me in my role today, like I'd totally take this. So like there's nobody I would like to swap with for a long period of time. I think for a short period of time, I'd probably most be interested in swapping roles with a scientist. Like I'm experiencing their deep understanding of certain topics, being it quantum physics or being it origin of the universe. Like I'm really interested in those big questions. I don't think if I took the role of Tim Cook or Elon Musk for a day that I could really benefit from that. I think this is way too complex, and like they're living very different lives, and swapping for a day would not give me any benefit.
That's a great answer. I really like that answer. That's probably one of my favorites that I've had. Perfect. And the final question that I ask people just before we go, if there's someone watching you now, someone who wants to start their own company, has the drive, but they're kind of holding themselves back for any number of reasons, what would you say to that person?
I think this goes back to the mistake which I made sometimes, to take decisions too late. I really do think that it's the right thing to take risks. Like, I mean, in most things in life are not irreversible. Yeah. So I think if something burns inside you, go for it. Just as an example, when I got the offer to join Facton, that was at a time when my wife and I had just bought a house, and my wife had just gotten pregnant. So it definitely was not the right time to start flying out and working somewhere else. And it's been a sacrifice for my family and for myself, but I think all of us now agree it was the right thing to do. And now I hope that with less traveling, I can start paying back on that. But if I had missed this opportunity, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be as happy today as I am. So I think people should do that and go ahead. And if I may add this in my own interest, and then they should get in touch with me. And maybe at some point, Constellation is the right company to acquire their company. Yeah. So I'm very curious to meet entrepreneurs, and maybe some of the people who are listening are starting companies, running companies in B2B software. So please do reach out to me. I'd be very happy to talk to you.
Well, that's very kind of you. Lovely. So that's gold. So you should definitely take your advice on that one. So thank you so much again. I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
I very much enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, and it was a great exchange. Thank you.
That was Alexander Swoboda, CEO of FACTON and CrescentOne.